Gamers, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the EXL Podcast. Today, we're going to try and cover a few topics in as timely fashion as we can, including clickbait, game sharing, Battlefront, is this generation of gamers turning into spoiled brats, DX12 and Witcher, and if time permits, a couple of other things. To discuss this with me today, I have Worry Wart.
Hello, hello.
And I, Dizzy from Playback Gaming.
Hey, y'all. Y'all.
He did promise me he's going to y'all as little as possible, so we'll see. Just keep a counter for me, people. So let's kick it off with a quick chat about game sharing. Now, a lot of people don't seem to really understand what game sharing is and how it was meant to be used. Now, this has resulted in a lot of people losing their rights to play games that they are sharing with somebody else that they don't actually live with and that they are not the license holder of. Now, the way that game sharing was intended to work is that you can set up your console so that anybody that uses it can play those games on their profile, plus benefit from only needing one active gold membership. This also means that you can sign into somebody else's console and they will have access to play those games whilst you're logged in. So using Xbox Live for, the way it was intended has kind of been bastardized a little bit. It doesn't mean that Microsoft has decided to cut their digital sales in half by people using game sharing to play games that their friend has bought that doesn't live in the same house as them. Now, straight up, I need to admit that I was actually game sharing with my brother when I first got my Xbox One, as we actually thought, like many others, that this is something that you were meant to be able to do. However, it's not. Many people are now logging in to play titles that their friend in a different state or country owns, and finding that they no longer have access to them, and it kicking up a huge stink, saying that Microsoft have done wrong by them. This is not the case. What do you guys think?
Who would you like to go first?
Well, you spoke first, so tag your rig.
You know what I think it is? If you remember back to when Microsoft first announced the Xbox One, they talked about that family share plan where you could pick 10 people, not necessarily family members, but just people who you wanted to be in your family share. And I think when they canceled that, people just decided that this share plan was going to be the way that they used it. And obviously, like you said, Microsoft didn't want to cut 50% of their digital sales out. So, you're going to use it like that, and then they say, hey, that's not what we intended, and then you're going to complain that, you want to just take 50% of their digital sales away, and how dare they stop you from doing this? Obviously, it wasn't meant to be used like that. I knew it wasn't meant to be used like that, and I didn't use it like that, so I don't know what the big deal is. It was just pretty obvious to me that, they're not looking to just say, hey, take away, 50% of the digital sales, give it to whoever you want, and we're fine with that.
Yeah, I think that I would say the same exact thing that he was saying, because that's the very first thing that I started thinking of is I started getting bitter thinking, it's like, well, I wanted that game sharing thing that they had announced when they originally talked about the Xbox One. That to me, that sounded brilliant. Right. I definitely would have used it. Right now, I don't do any kind of game sharing. Maybe I'm selfish or something, but I just don't do it. Even though I do most of my purchases digitally, it's an easy system to exploit, and I see why a lot of individuals are doing it. But all too often, I also see there's a lot of people always complaining that, oh, so and so wanted to see if I would game share with them, or so and so, they wanted me to add him so that they could game share with me and everything. And you see people complaining about it all the time, but these are also the people that are actually doing it. It isn't the way the system is set up. Yes, they're probably not going to hound you over it, but I'm hoping, because they keep talking about maybe they're going to bring back some sort of game sharing. They're looking into ways that they can do it. I'm hoping that they can really kick that off so that people will forget about this whole game sharing aspect and maybe look to the new thing that they wanted to do.
Right, especially now that being online and being digital is okay. It wasn't okay a little while ago, but now that everybody seems to be okay with buying things digitally and sharing things digitally, I can see that family share plan coming back and everyone being okay with it.
Yeah, definitely, and I think it's important that they do get that here sooner rather than later. I mean, the thing for me with this is I wrote an article about the game sharing maybe a week and a half ago, and it almost broke the internet. Like the amount of notifications I was getting was astronomical, and people were tearing shreds off me because they thought that either it was a complete bullshit, or that how is it that Microsoft would be allowed to do something like this, and why would they possibly be doing that to us? It was a big case of shoot the messenger, and more so because people weren't actually reading the information that I provided to them. They were just commenting on the subject matter. But, with game sharing, yeah, it's a great thing. I want to be able to game share with my brother as much as I can, because obviously it cuts down my purchase rate by 50%. But what people need to understand is that Microsoft aren't taking this off you. They aren't going out there typing your name into a system and going, oh, let's disable his game sharing. It's just because it wasn't actually intended to be used that way. Every now and again, the system's picking up another person that's doing it, and it's not working anymore. So
Right.
they're not targeting you. They're not specifically taking something away from you. But if your game sharing stops working, that's why. Because you weren't meant to be using it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. If you have an Xbox One and you're sharing your digital games with your friend who lives in another state, obviously you're going to sit there and you're going to say to yourself, there's something a little fishy about this. I can't see this being the policy, but you're still going to do it. But then don't complain when the company, cracks down on it, because they're not giving up 50% of their digital sales. I think the family share plan will come back eventually, and I think you'll be able to pick a limited amount of people to do that with. I think that's great, and I hope that they implement that soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that kind of segues me, from where I was talking about that article into the next subject that I want to talk about as well, which is clickbait. Now, this is something that has really started to get under my skin. As someone that reports on gaming news, both written and via my YouTube channel, I believe it's extremely important that your readers and viewers get what is effectively promised to them in the title of your said article or video. Now, that's just not the case with the wider gaming community these days. There are so many gamers out there that use clickbait as the bread and butter of their view count. And it pisses me off. Like, when I open up an article or launch a video and find out that the subject matter was only loosely relevant to the content, or in fact the exact opposite of what it claims to be. I mean, if you don't have any confidence in what you're saying or reporting on as being legitimate enough, engaging enough, or even entertaining enough to get you views without resorting to clickbait, then perhaps you shouldn't be bothering. Now, before I get on a big rant about this, what do you guys feel about that?
Go ahead.
I couldn't agree more. It's really sickening the way that people will utilize. And I mean, honestly, this clickbait is more than just what would be in the gaming spectrum. I mean, that's a media broad thing. Whenever you try to use a story to spin a story, so you take something that people have and they hold dear to their heart, so they go to read it, and then they go in there to see a story that's been spun that probably doesn't have any legitimate background to it, no backbone, nothing that actually holds it together. And so now you've just helped spread things like false information. Or people will use something like clickbait to, I think that one of the big things nowadays is definitely the fan wars, where like they'll be talking about in the article, it's nothing but console A, but somewhere briefly in the title they'll mention console B, so that the people who are going to be angry enough to go click on it to see what are they talking about, they go in there and it has nothing to do with the stuff that they do for console B, because it's all about console A.
Yeah.
I cannot stand clickbait. I understand why it works. That it's just a basic human psychology, but it's kind of sickening.
Yeah, I think for me, I think that I expect it when it's somebody who isn't a paid journalist. When it's somebody who has, like YouTube, you expect stuff like that. I think people see it as fun or a way to get hits and subs and stuff like that. So when I see titles for YouTubers and I click on them, I don't get too upset. But I think it's become so prevalent this generation with actual gaming journalists doing the same thing. And that's when it becomes something that's detrimental to the whole industry, because if you're going to be just like the average, guy uploading a video, guy or girl uploading a video without a care in the world to any of the content, and you're being paid to be a journalist, that's when it becomes detrimental, and that's when it's damaging. And especially with the image that gamers have, when you talk about gaming, every story that you see sometimes, most of the time, is always negative. Gaming causes this, gaming causes that, and the only thing people see is how gamers relate to one another in these, really bad communities, whether it's console A versus console B. But now we're starting to see it with actual journalists and sites, and they're doing it because, like you said, it works. It drives traffic, and it's a shame that that's what drives traffic. Hopefully, I don't know if it's going to happen this generation. Hopefully we can get back to people hungry for actual news, whether or not it's the console they like or not. It's about video games, and if you want news about video games, it shouldn't matter what console it is or who's talking about it. You should just be hungry for actual news.
Yeah, absolutely. Every single day now, I have such low expectations, unfortunately, now when I'm going through the news as to what I'm actually going to get to read when I open up an article. Fellow YouTubers, I mean, there's quite a few, and I'm not going to name anybody because you know who you are. And a lot of them, I'll see these titles come up on Facebook and on Twitter, and I'll be like, oh, what? You're admitting you were wrong about something? That can't be right. And I click on it, and they're like, oh, I was right. You weren't admitting that. You were just saying that in the goddamn title and bait me in, and it worked. It's just so frustrating, seriously, it's social media. You don't need to basically, effectively tell a lie just to get people to be interested in what you're doing. Just say it straight up. Give the news 100% the way it is. Put your spin on it, sure. Give your opinion, no problems. But don't tell bullshit in the title just to bait people in. It's just, all right, I'm going to end there because I could go.
I kind of blame things like Hollywood or like things like House of Cards, where it's all about lies. How can I lie to get ahead?
Don't blame Kevin Spacey.
Come on, Kevin Spacey did great in Advanced Warfare. I'll have you know.
Right. Yeah, I don't get it.
He lied.
I agree with what you're saying, but I personally, I don't get as upset when I see somebody who's like an entertainer doing it versus somebody who is an actual journalist. Like if I go to an actual site, I want news. I don't want to see the same things that I could see on Twitter or YouTube. You know what I mean? I want integrity. Absolutely. I just want somebody to have a little bit of integrity and take their bias, because everyone has a preference. I understand preference. Take your preference and be able to rise above it and give actual news.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, obviously my preference is the Xbox One, but I have nothing against the PlayStation or people who enjoy it, or the PC or the Wii U. The only thing that I have an issue with is people who collect amiibos. No, I'm kidding. Sorry, Kevin. Joking.
Hey, I collect Star Wars figures, so I can't talk about amiibos.
Yeah, but your Star Wars collection is amazing.
Too much.
All right, well, look, moving on to the next thing, because again, this just that subject matter segues into the next one, which is, has this generation of gamers turned into a bunch of spoiled brats?
Ding ding.
Well, where do I even get started on this one? I'm just so disappointed in what we have seen this generation of gamers turn into. Nothing is ever good enough. Things are announced too early. They're not announced early enough. We don't have enough options. These free games aren't games I want. Blah, blah, blah. And the negativity. Oh, my God. Don't even get me started on that. Now, look, you both know if you let me go on about this, we'll be here all night. So let's hear from you first. No. Let's hear from you guys first.
Who you want to go first?
You spoke first. You'll learn. You speak first. You go first.
All right. Well, you know what? I'm going to use an example of me personally. Recently, I'm guilty of it. I was kind of upset with the whole, and it's not official yet, but Gears of War, everybody's talking about Gears of War, and something's going on with Gears. We may be getting something. Who knows? But I was kind of upset. I don't like when things leak. It's almost like, when you come down on Christmas morning, if you celebrate Christmas and you want to see what's under the tree or whatever, and the night before you find out everything except for one thing. Well, the impact isn't the same. So it's hard to keep a secret, but I think people just expect so much, and I'm using Gears as an example because as soon as people start to talk about Gears, and it might be Gears 1, right? Now that's great. As soon as that happened, you see the tweets. Well, I'd rather have all 3. Well, I'd rather have all 4. Well, why not a collection? Well, why not this? Well, why not that? Well, you have to learn how to be happy with what you have instead of arguing about what you want. Just be happy that you're getting something. And
Yeah.
it's constant negativity. Nothing is good enough. Nothing at all. And I think it's just, I don't know if this is the first console generation that's really been heavily entrenched with social media. I mean, last gen kind of, but this gen with these consoles, it's all about, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. And I think maybe that's a detriment. I'm not sure if it's a detriment or it's helping. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it's a detriment. I guess it's a double-edged sword. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing more and more and more of it every single day, like particularly on Twitter. I guess with Facebook, you're kind of restricted to your own world that you create with how many groups you're in or how many friends you have. But with Twitter, you're less restricted on that because anybody can see anything and comment in on it. So it's much more global, I think, than what Facebook is. But that Gears example is the perfect example. Now, anybody that's familiar with me knows how big I've been on China when we thought it was going to be the Marcus Phoenix collection, getting that out there. And for me, I've been dying for any news on Gears of War. But this isn't the way I wanted it. And, the thing is that I guess I need to accept some responsibility on this as well because I wrote an article about the leaked image and I put that out there. So I guess, as Kevin called me earlier, I'm an enabler because I contributed to getting that news out there and getting that leak out there more. So that probably, in hindsight, was something I should not have done. I should have just sat on that. But, the other side of that coin is it wouldn't have mattered if I did or didn't write that because look at how wide it's out there, how many people have been reporting on it, how many articles and videos and all that kind of stuff. It was not going to make any difference at all. But it's one of those things where we have been starving for news in the Gears of War community for so long that for us to have a big announcement like that, like a proper big announcement, would have been massive. It would have reinvigorated the community again. It would have incited passion back into Gears of War. It would have sold consoles on the spot. But instead, we all know now about it. We know about it. We don't have solid details, but we know it's happening. We know that something's there. And it's not like we didn't know. We always knew what was happening anyway. So why would these people go and leak this stuff like that? It's just they can't put their name to it. They can't get any gratitude for it. All they're doing is purposely ruining things like these big reveals.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get across. I mean, I was kind of upset about it, but that's what I was trying to get across. I'm excited about, and you should still be excited. I mean, it's definitely exciting that you're getting a, quote unquote, you may be getting a Gears title this year. That's exciting news. But I was more upset with the fact that people are sort of praising. If you're a person who's doing something and you're told, hey, don't tell anybody about it, and then you just stab them in the back and tell people about it, and then the community embraces that person and helps them enable telling everybody about it. That's what I don't like. I mean, I love the fact that we may be getting a Gears title, and I'm sure you do too. And I don't care if I get one Gears of War game or the whole collection. Give me anything, and I'm happy.
Exactly. I mean, I've been saying for 12 months now, give me Gears 1, give me Gears 2, give me Gears 5. I don't care. Just give me some goddamn Gears. But, now it's just, I don't know, I feel like when they do announce it, I'm going to be like, yeah, that's great. I mean, I know a little bit more about it than what I knew a week ago, but whereas before, when they came, if this didn't happen and they came out with that reveal, it would have been massive. It would have been frigging awesome. And to see the reaction from the community would have been amazing. But now, everybody's just like speculating and, oh, it only happened because of this and, oh, it only happened because of that. And it's driving me nuts. And so I'm just really disappointed.
Well, I'm sure there's still some things that they can do to be surprised. I'm sure there are more surprises to come. in terms of Gears.
Yeah.
So, don't be all doom and gloom, Bella. Come on, Gears, Gears of War.
Yeah. Yeah, which is great. Like, don't get me wrong, I am happy about it. I'm excited about it. I'm just, disappointed in what's ended up coming of it.
Yeah.
So I've been listening to all of this. I'm going to kind of play devil's advocate to this.
Here we go.
I agree with everything you're saying. Definitely, if somebody spoils something, that's special, especially things, again, a franchise that people hold dear to their hearts and everything, it does put a damper on everything that, of what could have, should have been, But what about also that we have these companies, they are utilizing things like, they've been doing the whole Call of Duty Black Ops. They've been using Snapchat, to get these little things out so that people, they see this and everything. They build their own little hype and everything. So now you have all these people that are already speculating. So to them, the people who are speculating, isn't it almost like that they still are opening up that Christmas gift because they're like, oh, yeah, I was right. Yes, it's probably for the people who aren't, it's definitely going to put a damper on them, but, they kind of get something out of that in a way.
I can see your point. I mean, but the people that are speculating aren't forcing that information on anyone. You know what I mean? Something as big as Gears, as soon as you went on, any social media, you couldn't avoid it. Whereas if I'm speculating on a game, I'm really just, talking to my circle of friends. But something as big as Gears, once you put it out there, everyone's going to jump on it, and you can't help but look, unless you just don't go on any social media whatsoever.
Oh, yeah.
Which is so hard to do,
there's no hope for you there.
Right.
You look over to the side, you see the trends, you see what's working now. And
it's like saying I'm not going to watch any of the Star Wars trailers until the new movie comes out. Well, that's not going to happen. I'm going to watch them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so, I think people could still
Are we talking about, like, spoiled gamers as far as, like, what news is concerned? Or are we talking about, like, within the whole industry? Like, because I can see people being upset that, okay, so somebody's saying that they want a Gears of War remake and they want the whole thing, right? They want the whole shebang. They want the Master Chief Edition only for Gears of War, and they only get one, and then they complain about it. Yeah, I think you're definitely being spoiled. But I think that maybe somebody, like, let's take Evolve, for instance, $130 for DLC. And if they want to complain about $130 for DLC, and really you're not getting a whole lot back in return into that $180, you're getting a couple of skins and all this. If we would have kicked it back 10 years ago, that shit would have been free. I think that there's a fine line where we say that, gamers are spoiled depending on the way that it's being projected. Because
it's all perspective.
Yeah, I would probably side with somebody who's saying, like, I'm tired of paying for this DLC. We're not getting enough out of it. If they have a legitimate reason, I think that could probably side with them. But if you're going to complain because, they're only going to give me this, they're only going to give you this, you're getting something. Come on.
Exactly.
And you don't have to take it. It's not.
Yeah. Nobody's forcing you.
Double exactly.
Right.
Absolutely right. It's like the free games with gold. Every month without fail, and I shit you not, every month without fail, when I share the article about what games are going to be free with gold this month, there is 75% negativity. Only 25% of the people are like, oh, that's cool. That's a game I haven't played yet. I'd enjoy that. Or I haven't played that for years. I'll download that digitally and sell my physical copy and pick up another game. There are a few people out there that are sensible about it, that can see the benefits of it. But the majority of people, their reaction is, oh, that game's shit, or I've already played that, or I don't want any of those games. You know what? Here's the funny thing, and I know this hasn't occurred to a lot of people, so, let me help you out here. If you don't want the game, don't download it. Simple. Wait till next month and see what free games are there. And hang on, let me just reiterate on that word. What free games are there? Because they are free. They're not a part of your membership or your subscription. They're an added extra. They're a bonus, and you should just be goddamn well thankful that they're giving them to you.
What is also pretty sad about that is the fact that whenever somebody who is getting it for free, it's not free for Microsoft. Every time that somebody actually downloads it, they're actually going to end up paying that developer X amount so that they get some kind of compensation in order for that to go through.
Sure.
Yeah, it's an additional added extra. It's something that they're doing at their own cost for us because we are loyal supporters. And as loyal supporters, as loyal members of these companies, what do we do to thank them? We whinge and bitch at them. We tweet them telling them it's not good enough. We send messages to them on their Facebook pages saying that they need to change what they're doing because you know these games aren't games I want to play. I want you to give me something I want to play because I'm the most important gamer in the world. Don't you understand? Out of the billions of gamers, my needs are more important than everybody else's. So could you please just give me these free games next month? I can see that working.
You know what I think most of it stems from, and this is just my opinion. I think that it all comes from this sort of console war, and you have to sort of compare what free games you've got to the other guy's free games, and if they're not on the same level, then you complain about it. But this is the only generation of gamers that complain about free things. I never got anything for free. I had to go to the store. I had to buy the game. I had to blow on the damn cartridge to get it to work. I mean, nothing was free. So just take what they give you. If you enjoy your PlayStation, then whatever's happening on the Xbox shouldn't matter to you. And the same thing, vice versa. If you enjoy your Xbox, why would you care what the free game on PSN was for the month of March and argue about it? It makes absolutely no sense. And the problem is this whole generation, the way that these companies are marketing themselves to gamers. I mean, this is the first generation where 1080p is an actual product. It's something that they're marketing. You know, I mean, how many games did you play last generation that the first thing you said in the store when you walked in, well, I need to know if this is 60 frames a second or I'm not going to buy it. You know, nobody. So I think that
it's been a long time since, graphics comparisons. I mean, we'd have to go back to the Sega Genesis, Nintendo, Super Nintendo days where, 16-bit, 32-bit, and Sega does what Nintendo don't.
Right. They put 32-bit right on the Genesis, right, or the Mega Drive over in the UK, marketing that stuff. But I mean, it's just crazy. You buy the game, you take it home, and you play it on the system that you have, and you're supposed to be enjoying video gaming. You're supposed to be able to talk with other people about a game. A perfect example of this: somebody asked me a question. They said, "Are you buying The Witcher?" And I said, "Absolutely." Now, the next question wasn't, are you excited about the open world? Are you excited about all that you can do? Are you excited by those trailers you say? It was, which console are you buying it on? Well, who cares where I'm buying it? Why is that important?
Exactly. And these games, they come out with the information before launch about, it's going to be 1080p or it's not going to be 1080p, or all that kind of detail come out, and then people will go out of their way to try and discredit that. They'll take down trailers and dissect the trailers and try and prove that it's not 1080p, and what does it matter?
Well,
do you like the game? Then play the game. God.
When I was talking about, when entertainers do that versus journalists, if you're a journalist and you're writing a story about The Witcher, the title of it shouldn't be The Witcher is 1080p. It should be, The Witcher. I'm going to talk about the open world and everything that you can do in it. I'm going to tell you about the gameplay. I'm going to tell you about the narrative. I'm going to talk to you about the graphics. But it's 1080p. Next article.
Yeah, it's more about that 1080p rather than the 200, hours of gameplay plus.
Yeah.
Because it's a bigger number, obviously,
Right. I mean, it is an advantage. I'm not saying it's not better. I mean, 1080p obviously is the benchmark this generation, but I mean, that's not all there is to a game.
Absolutely. And, back when people were playing on the Commodore 64.
Oh, boy. Tooth Invaders.
Yeah, oh, God, there's so many good games. Summer Olympics. Like, the thing with Summer Olympics, though, is it used to always freeze at the high dive.
Yep.
Anyway, I digress. We weren't complaining about graphics because it wasn't something that was shoved down our throats via social media. as something that we should expect. And that sort of goes full circle back into what I was saying before about gamers being spoiled. They're expecting everything to be these set, defined rules, I guess, that they now see them as rules of what isn't going to be acceptable as a game. No, the game is, it's about engaging you. It's about your enjoyment. It's about you having some heart-pumping moments, or getting scared out of your seat, or laughing your head off. Like, it's about the enjoyment of the game. It's not about its resolution. It's not about its frame rate. Those things they only come into play and become important when you're looking at something like Call of Duty, for example. You don't want to play Call of Duty at 30 FPS. 30 frames per second, because, well, it's obvious. It's a fast game. It's a shooter. You want that to be at 60 FPS. So that's when that kind of thing comes into play. A game like, let's say, Borderlands, for example, who gives a shit if that's at 30 FPS? No one.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. But people still call games out like that because it's not. And I don't understand it. It drives me nuts. And people need to get back to focusing on what is important. And that is the game and your enjoyment of the game. Not having something that you can argue with on somebody else that's on a different console to you. But, oh, well, my game's doing this. Is your game doing that? No, it's not. So we must be superior. Oh, shut up.
I use this analogy for myself, basically, because no one listens to me. But two of the best-looking games this generation aren't even close to being 1080p. And if you have a PlayStation and you play The Order 1886, it is a beautiful game that isn't even close to being 1080p. And if you have an Xbox One and you've played Rise, it is a beautiful game that is not close to being 1080p. So the argument falls apart there. Now, the frames per second argument, obviously, 1080p frames per second. The standard's different for different genres of game. A shooter, you want 60 frames per second. A racer, you want 60 frames per second. An action adventure, hey, let's go for 1080p and 30 frames per second. It's different for every genre of game. It's not a standard that's set for everything.
Exactly. But unfortunately, the younger generation of gamers that are coming through now are having that bred into their culture, that this is what you must expect. And if you don't get that, then it's simply not good enough.
Yeah. Or they say you're just making excuses because, you're only talking about lower resolution because you have a weak console or something like that.
Or
it's actual information.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you have an actual opinion about a game because it's great, and someone says to you, oh, well, your game isn't running as a higher resolution on your console as it is on mine, and you give them an actual piece of information about the game, or I'm enjoying it because of this, or I think it's great because of that, all of a sudden you're just damage controlling.
Yeah, it's a shame, but
it's just silly that it's all about the 1080p that they got to talk about when they're just going to turn around and complain about the game that they just got for free.
Yeah. Oh, it's great, isn't it? All right,
so I can play this terrible Rayman and better pixels.
Rayman looks so good on the Xbox One, though, doesn't it?
I just want to make sure that I have the proper amount of grass in GTA. If I don't have, if my friend
the more
has
grass you
6
have,
bushes,
the more they're gonna have to mow. I don't know about you, but I don't like doing yard work.
All right, we've lingered on this one too long. We're going to move on to the next subject matter. Now, I think that I'm going to let Worrywart take the lead on this. And even though I'm a huge Star Wars fan, I don't even come close to Worry's knowledge on the subject matter. So it seems fitting that we let him lead this one. So moving on to Battlefront and no campaign.
I can't blame them for not putting a campaign in there because the Star Wars universe is so small. It must be difficult to come up with any stories at all in a universe as small as Star Wars with such limited characters, and so you really can't blame DICE. I'm just kidding. I mean, anything. Put anything in there. It's a Star Wars game. People do like Star Wars. I mean, if you played the old Battlefront games, there were a lot of things you can do besides multiplayer in there. This is almost like a step backwards compared to the last Battlefront game. I just cannot believe that there isn't anything in there at all, especially that they're tying in the the free DLC is called Battle of Jakku. You know the trailer, the second trailer for Star Wars. You see that down Star Destroyer in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
the DLC, you're gonna play that battle and find out how that Star Destroyer got on the planet. So they're tying it in with the new movie. Why not put something in there? Anything at all? I cannot believe they're not doing that. I'm very disappointed. But like an idiot, I'm still gonna buy the game because I'm a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, there's no doubt that you're still going to have that day one.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just really disappointed. But I'm holding out hope because Amy Hennig from Naughty Dog, she wrote the stories for the Uncharted series. She's supposed to be working on a single-player, story-driven, heavy narrative game for EA based in the Star Wars universe. So there's that.
Yeah, so you will get your campaign eventually, just not now.
Right.
And ironically, Kevin is also, or iDizzy, is also a massive Star Wars fan. He's actually running a Facebook page for Battlefront at the moment because he's that excited about it. How do you feel about the lack of a campaign option?
I'm actually on the opposite end of the spectrum. The first one, it didn't have it really didn't have a campaign. Like, what you're saying, there's,
right.
You had your little missions that you go do there. I don't think that they're going to be pulling away. I think that this is going to be more closer to the first Battlefront than the second Battlefront. But even whenever I look back and I reflect on Battlefronts 2, I don't really reflect on what I was doing with the campaign because to me it was just like it was there, I did it. It was more about what I was doing on the battlefield itself. And I hate saying that because DICE, Battlefield, blah. But I kind of have a theory of why they're reluctant to do a campaign, and this goes back to the Disney purchase of Star Wars. Disney purchases Star Wars, and then all of a sudden, 6 months later, they say, hey, this EU, the expanded universe that everybody has been spending years and years and years and years building upon, it's not canon anymore. Mm-hmm. So we see things that people have become accustomed to, oh, this is how this works, and they kind of they build all this stuff. It's gone to waste, right? So for a game company to come in here, they're stuck and they're limited on what they can do because no matter what they do, it's not going to be canon, and you can only retell the story so many times before people are like, it's the same story, we're just going to play it this time, and then they go get, Battlefront 8 and they're doing the same thing. It's really hard for them to go build a campaign, build a story, and link things together without the cooperation of what's going on elsewhere. You can't really get that because they don't want to give up their movie stuff. They don't want to do that, so they're going to do little things like, the Battle of Jakku and everything. And it's because of the EU falling apart is why we don't have 1313 anymore. That was an almost finished game, and they canned it because, we don't want this part of and we don't want people to think that this is part of, the new Star Wars, because the movies and your cartoons, that's canon in them.
Yeah,
I blame it on Disney.
If you're making a game about Star Wars, though, space should be involved in it somewhere. And we don't have any space battles either in this game. I mean, it's called Star Wars. There are stars in space. They said they want to recreate all the classic battles from the original, which is, quote unquote, original trilogy. I remember quite a few battles in space. So, I mean, what's going on? Do you think that they rushed it?
I think that you'll see something from the DLC in there.
Oh boy, I can't wait to pay for space battles.
It's EA for you. What'd you expect?
Yeah, right. I want it free.
I mean, it's sort of the same thing with Titanfall. Titanfall came out with no campaign, and there was a lot of backlash from that. And I have two schools of thought about this. My first one is you're going to play the campaign probably once, right? Like when we're talking about a game with campaign and multiplayer, don't get cranky at me yet.
I think it would depend on how well the campaign was done. For some people.
Star Wars.
Yeah, but primarily most people are going to play through the campaign once, and then they're going to spend the majority of their time online in multiplayer. Like Call of Duty is a perfect example. play the campaign once. Yep, that was tops. Now into multiplayer every single night, every week, every month. Like that's the core amount of time that you will spend playing that game will be online multiplayer. So I can see why some companies are now starting to take that approach where they're like, well, you know what, you may play the campaign, but you're going to play the campaign for like, what, 8 hours? You're probably going to play the multiplayer for 150 hours.
I'm not gonna allow you to give Destiny a pass.
No.
I'm not even going to bring up Destiny.
You know what, though?
Dead to me.
Gears is a perfect example of why I hope that developers don't get caught up in this multiplayer-centric push, because Gears has a single-player component that is great. I play those over and over again. I love that story, but they also pay close attention to really great multiplayer. And I think a lot of times it's the multiplayer first, and then we get these really bad single-player campaigns, and I don't want to see the death of single-player.
Absolutely, because that's my second school of thought. When it does come to the campaign as well, though, like, not everybody wants to be playing online all the time. Not everybody wants to have somebody yakking in their ear or some 12-year-old screaming about how they had sex with your mother while you're gaming. You want to be able to enjoy your time. I know, right? Apparently there's all these 12-year-olds having sex with mums out there. It's amazing. Just jump into a Call of Duty multiplayer map. You'll hear all about it. But getting back on track, you know, people want to be able to spend that time on their own. Or sometimes maybe they don't have the best internet. So playing online multiplayer all the time isn't achievable for them, or they have a cap that they have to worry about, or their internet goes down, but they still want to be able to play something, so they play the campaign. Like, there's so many different reasons why the campaign in a game is important, it's relevant, and I don't want to see it to become irrelevant.
You know why it's really important? Because when you're playing Gears, we're talking about Gears a lot. When you're playing Gears multiplayer, right? If there's no story in Gears and you're playing as Marcus Phoenix in the multiplayer, you don't even know who Marcus Phoenix is. You don't relate to him. But by playing the trilogy, you know, you relate to that character, not because of the multiplayer, but because of the story that you went through. And that's how you build up fan bases. That's how you build up appreciation for the story and the environment and the characters and the universe. That's how these games become as big as they are.
Absolutely. Like Gears of War, as you said, we are talking about Gears a lot, but that's fine because I love Gears, and who doesn't want to talk about Gears? But it is a prime example in a lot of different situations. And Gears of War has one of the most engaging storylines that I've ever seen. You can't help but form some kind of, you know, almost like relationship with these characters. You know, you know their story, you know their back history, you understand their personality, you know the hardships that they've gone through. You know, when Dom died, like, I can't even get into it. Like, if I watch one tear, I wish there was only one tear. Whenever I watch that cutscene, I still have tears well up in my eye. It was just such an impactful moment in that story because you do know so much about him and how much heartache he's been through, and the love between him and Marcus as brothers, and you can't get that from multiplayer.
And it makes it so much better when you play multiplayer, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
These characters,
exactly. You know, you choose your character based on who you have the most, well, not relevance with, but you know, the most appreciation for. Yeah, exactly right. So, yeah, I'm pro campaign.
You know, and I think we might have accidentally contradicted that whole clickbait if they would have clicked onto this to see the Battlefronts. Go right to Gears of War. But we're talking about Battlefronts. The whole purpose of Battlefronts was to play the battles that are happening, you know, wherever in the, you know, universe that they're taking place on. You don't really need a campaign to go do that. DICE, they've always been great with the Battlefield series. I mean, I think that the last time I actually enjoyed a campaign by DICE was Battlefield Bad Company 2, and that was definitely leaps and bounds better than what Bad Company was. They've never been great about doing any kind of campaign. Now, yes, it's Star Wars. I don't know if I would trust them with a campaign as far as telling a story, because to me, I think that DICE would botch that. So a game that's supposed to be about the Star Wars battles going on, and primarily that's what the dump is, I want them to go do that. I want them to go make a beautiful, extravagant Battlefield that I could go in there with my Jedi lightsaber or whatever kind of pistol that I have and just go to town.
I mean, I can see what you're saying, but I mean, I remember a game on a GameCube called Rogue Squadron, and that did, space battles, and it had great battles that you already knew about because you saw the movies, but it still gave you a single-player component and a story.
Oh, yeah. I guess my underlying thing is I just don't trust DICE to do a campaign properly. So let them do what they're doing with Battlefronts, and we'll save the great campaign games for all these others.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, Lego will probably out-campaign DICE in a campaign.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I'm still buying Star Wars Battlefront. Don't get me wrong. Huge Star Wars fan. You have to pick it up.
Oh,
Oh, goodness. All right. I think we've covered Battlefront.
I can go all night long.
Well, we are creeping up to about the 40-minute mark now, so we're going to wrap it up with this last thing. Basically, something that it was important for me that I touched on really quickly is that I was amazed last week when I wrote an article about the importance of using an external hard drive on your Xbox One to find out how many people aren't using an external hard drive and are instead running their console with their internal storage maxed out. Now, getting an external hard drive will mean that you will have performance improvements on your console and faster loading times. You don't have to worry about installing your games again if you have to a factory reset or something happens with your console. It makes it completely so much easier if you just grab your hard drive if you're traveling between here and another location on a regular basis, and so you can play your games on that console as well without having to download them on both of them. It was really important that I brought that up because I think so many people don't understand the importance of using an external hard drive and getting all that excess data off your console that doesn't need to be there. Free it up. Let it have a bit of breathing space. Don't clog your console, people.
Go ahead.
No, that's it. I'm gonna wrap it up on that one. I'm not gonna go any further. You guys got any opinion on that?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you on that. Now, we'll say that with an asterisk that it will increase the performance because not all external HDs are created equally. Some of it you probably won't see much of an improvement. There's others that you definitely will. I'm not sure. Are they doing solid state drives external now? Okay, so definitely, obviously, if you get a solid state drive, that's definitely going to be leaps and bounds better than not doing one. It is very convenient. For instance, I have a mutual friend. Me and my girlfriend, we go over to their house all the time. I actually just got them into buying an Xbox One a few months back, and I ended up buying Titanfall digitally, so I gave them my physical copy. I gave them Plants vs. Zombies since I picked it up through EA Access, and they're having a blast. But whenever we go over there, we want to play, maybe something else. I could just take my external hard drive, go plug it in, go log in, and it's bam, it's right there. Everything. In the palm of my hand. A lot of people, they reflect on things like, oh, well, why don't you have something like streaming? I'm sorry. In a lot of places, streaming just isn't going to work right now. So doing these externals, I honestly, I'm not sure if PlayStation does it. I believe that they do external. If you have the ability to do external, so much better than doing it internal. So much better.
I think the PlayStation thing, I think that you can do an external, but you can't store an entire game. You can just store save files right now. I could be wrong, but I remember reading
Hopefully
that.
they change that.
I'm sure they will. But, definitely, I think the big divide is the fact that there's a lot of people that still are physical, and getting a hard drive means digital. Now, I've pretty much gone digital. I kind of go back and forth. Sometimes I feel myself being pulled back to those cases, but I'm thinking about 10 years from now, putting these consoles on the shelf somewhere with the hard drive next to them, and my entire collection is right there. I don't have to worry about losing anything. That's appealing to me. Now, as far as making the console perform better, the one that I bought, my load times are quick. I mean, it performs much better than it did when I had these games internally stored on the 500 gigabyte hard drive. So, it's a win-win for me. I love it.
Hey, even if you are doing physical, still get it because you can
they
put
still
it
install.
onto you can put it on the external, and even if you need to drag along the CDs because you're living in the Stone Age, do it. It's well worth the investment.
Absolutely.
We echoed.
Yeah. So that pretty much covers everything that we were going to go over. I mean, the only other thing that I'm really, really excited for right now, anybody who knows me knows what I'm about to say. Official reveal, Black Ops 3 tomorrow morning. So excited. So I'll be up at the wee hours of the morning, almost unable to read anything because my eyes will be so blurry at 2 a.m. But I will be up, and I will be covering that stuff. So make sure that you either follow Playback Gaming on the website or on Facebook. I'll leave some links at the end of this in the description if you want to make sure that you get that news notified to your phone as soon as it's available. And these two gentlemen both have stellar YouTube channels, some great content, very entertaining stuff. If you're interested in seeing Worry Wart's Star Wars collection, that's where you need to go. So I will also leave their channels in the description, so make sure you go and subscribe to these guys. So thank you to everybody who's tuned in, and unless either of you two have something else you'd like to add, I think we'll finish it up here.
I'm good.
All right, well, thank you very much for joining me, guys. Night, everybody.
Night.
Adios.